Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who watched my last video, I'm going to attempt to rebuild a C4 transmission. This thing was manufactured in 1974, but figures out to be a 1975 model. And I had said in that video that I had made myself up a stand in order to hold the transmission while I did all the rebuilding in it. Now what I did is I went out and I found somebody that had an old engine stand, and it was cheap, 45 bucks on Facebook Marketplace, but I went on to Amazon and I bought this piece right here that came with this tube and pin and these arms. And if I remember, I'll put it in the description down below as far as what it was. But it did come from Amazon. That was about $65. But I figured that was $65 well spent, just so that this thing was easier to handle. But it's going to be my attempt, first time on an automatic transmission, to rebuild it. Now I have some backup if I have some problems with people with a lot more knowledge than myself. But I'm going to tie into this. The first thing I'm going to do, put it on time lapse. We'll get rid of the bell housing. We'll get rid of the pan itself. That's pretty simple. Since it's my first time on this, I am going to bag everything and mark it so that I know where the bolts go back. But in the video that I'm going to show you next, I am going to go step by step with the gentleman who put this video out. You know, pause the video, do whatever I have to do, go back to the video, just go back and forth to get this task accomplished. So let me turn the camera around and I'll show you that video. Okay, I've brought up on my iPad, this is the video that I'm going to be using to rebuild my transmission. I don't know if you can see that, but that's the first part of the video when it comes up. It is 1 hour, 3 minutes and 44 seconds, and it says Deboss Garage. Just don't want to mispronounce it. And for reference sake, if you want to go there, that's where I'm getting the majority of my instructions from. So let's get into this. All right, this transmission is another Facebook Marketplace purchase. The gentleman that had it didn't know anything about it, but I could tell by the pictures that it had the larger input shaft on it. So I went ahead with the purchase. And to get this thing apart, I am going to first use a 1/2 inch 9/16 and a 5/8 inch deep well on a small impact. Some of the older bell housings were held on actually with the pump mounting bolts, so they did two jobs at once. But on these later models, they used separate bolts for holding on the bell housing. So I'm going to put this on time lapse, and we'll get the bell housing, the pan, and actually the modulator off of this thing and get all the bolts bagged up and start getting this thing ready to put it on to the mount that I made up. Now in this video that I'm watching to help me rebuild this transmission, the guy that's doing it is he stresses this a lot. After you've pulled off the clip to hold in the modulator, and you go to pull the modulator from its position, there is this little pin that has to be, you know, sometimes if there's oil in the pan itself, it actually starts to flush this out and it might end up on the floor. So I'm going to make sure that I put that in the bag with the bolt, and then in behind that, you grab a magnet, and that's the valve that modulator activates. Okay, and I don't feel a spring or anything in behind it. So I think I've got everything that's going to go in the bag. As I said earlier, this pan had been off before, and you can see where I wiped across it. I do have some residue there, but it's very fine. There's no big hunks in the transmission, so I should be able to get away with just cleaning that up and removing the gasket before I put it back on. And looks like maybe the rest of the transmission might be in pretty good shape. Bottom side of that valve body. Everything looks in pretty good shape inside the transmission. I'll go grab a light here so we can get a better look at it. All right, I think that's going to be it for today. I've got a tennis game to go to, but we got it to the point where I can really start digging into this thing. I've got all the bolts bagged up and marked, so I think we're going to go ahead and maybe after the tennis match come back and get a little deeper into this. Alrighty, it's been about a week and I'm finally digging back into this thing. I'm hoping by the looks of this that the inside is not in too bad a shape, but I'm going to put it on time lapse and we'll start digging into this just like they're doing in the video that I'm watching. In his video, he was able to separate the parts of this servo to be able to replace these two square O-rings. I was not able to do that because how tight it was, but I was able to do it by putting an air hose into this hole right here on that stem. But I could see after getting apart that there's also a hole here. Now I'd be careful because if that's jammed and you put 100 pounds of pressure behind that, that could come out with some velocity. But that's just another way to get that servo apart. after I got the reverse servo apart, the cover itself, the O-ring that goes around this thing was up against a bunch of rust. I don't know if it worked its way back in there or what, but all I did is grab a piece of 80 grit, folded it in fourths so that it had kind of a rounded corner on it, and I'm working it around in that groove to get it cleaned out so that when that O-ring gets squished in there, hopefully it won't leak. But I'm going to clean up the outside of this. I'm going to tape off the part that goes in towards the transmission, and I'm going to shoot it with some black paint just to dress it up a little bit. What I was able to do differently from what he did, he took a screwdriver from the backside and beat the pump out. I happened to bring out the shaft because it looked like something that he tried and it didn't work. I pulled the shaft out and I tapped it down and it busted that seal loose. So from that point, I'm gonna pull this pump assembly out. All right, and there's a gasket behind that. So I'm going to set that down on the floor and clean up some of the oil that's dripping out. All right, the next step he has you work on is getting out these two little clips here. This one is on the side of your adjuster, and this is where I threw the servo back in here so you could see how it went on to this little clip here. But to get that out, all you have to do is take a little tension off of that band and pull that out. And you can see that there's a flat spot on each end of that clip. So there's really no wear on this particular one. And over here on this side, you should be able to just push it over and pull it away. And it looks as if this one can go in either direction also. So we'll get those out, clean those up, pull this adjuster out, and then go on from there. Okay, we'll pull out this rear drum first. Okay, in the upcoming video here, you can see where there's a chip or part of that driver missing. I was able to get a replacement for that from my buddy who has the transmission shop. That piece that was missing was not in the transmission, so evidently somebody had it apart and knew that piece had been broken and put it back together. Next, he says to pull out the second gear band. And I'm going to say that band looks like it's in really good shape. Now, we are going to replace it because it was ordered, and I want this thing to be completely fresh when I go to put it into the car. But as I see it, there's not a front or a back to this thing. It looks like it is symmetric so that it can be put in either direction. I'll do some reading to make sure, but I'll just wipe that off so it doesn't make a mess. And down in here, of course, that's the top of the transmission. I'm not seeing anything gritty or ugly yet at this point. He says the next piece that we're pulling out is the front planetary. Now there is a washer with some tangs on it that evidently go into the gear set behind it. So those surfaces look fairly nice here on my transmission. The gears are all there, and this driver hub is also in nice shape. So we'll pull this washer back off, maybe, set it in here, and right here are the planetaries. So it goes in this direction, spins well. I guess those are needle bearings, and from what I've read, that you have to buy this as a unit. But the splines on the inside are in nice shape, and all the gear sets look like they have all their teeth. This actually goes in this direction. Let's do this. See what it feels like. Those little tangs go down in there, and that's got like a brass copper. Get those together. And it looks like that bushing is replaceable on that, and I know that came with the kit. So let's set this off to the side and see what he has us do next. He says the next part to come out is the sun shell and the sun gear. The gear is that section, but it just pulls out. And there's the gear on the other end of it also. It's got a little chuck to it, back and forth. I don't know if that's acceptable or not. And the surface on the outside, I don't think it has anything to do with anything. But both of those gears seem to be in good shape. And behind it, I see another bearing surface with tangs that go to the back of the transmission. Let me set this down, see if I can get this off on camera. There we go. There's a little indentation that I was able to get behind that. But it has 3 indentations that goes into. So the back of this housing has that bearing surface behind it, and the bearing surface on that is very nice because it is hard to get off once you get that oil suction on there. But again, I think that piece was ordered or in the kit. He says the next piece to come out is the rear planetary. Again, I believe these are needle bearings, and those are all nice and free. And everything is looking real clean. I'm wondering if someone hasn't recently rebuilt this before I got a hold of it. And in behind that set of planetary gears is another bearing surface that looks like it has the indentations, the holes to put that into to keep it from spinning. And again, that looks in pretty good shape. And let's get back to his video and see what we do next. I've changed the camera angle, and the one thing that he did name these, he called them a strut rod, those little pieces that go on to the band. But I'm not exactly sure how he got those out of there. Maybe I'll have to loosen up this adjuster in order to do that, but he seemed to take them right out while it was without doing that. And let's see what I can do here. It came out. And it might be easier if I take the adjuster off. But there again, strut rod looks like it'll go in either direction, and when that back servo comes through there, it has this little round indentation for it, and definitely loosened that band up in order to pull that out. Oh, this one's quite a bit longer, and it runs on the two outside. But that one looks like it's in good shape. That one looks like it's in good shape. We'll get that cleaned up. I'll move the tripod so I can get this band out of here, and we'll go to the next step. Oh, I think I did remember seeing this on the video, that there's this little notch here in order to get this, I think it's a reverse band out of there. And it will definitely only go in one way, because these two brackets have to fit up to that adjuster back there. So when this goes back in, it's going to have to go in this direction and then rotate up to clear everything on the inside. Let me see. Well, I guess I'll figure that out when the time comes. But again, this band looks like it's in great shape. It still has the little grooves in it, and all the band is there. So we'll just clean this one up and we'll save it in the spare parts. All right, the next thing he says we need to do is get this snap ring off of this output shaft. Now he does it with a pair of snap ring pliers, but this thing does not have any holes in it for a regular snap ring. So I'm going to attempt to use my pick set. I've got about 4 different ones. Then I'm going to try to get under that, lift it up, and then get behind it. But my hands are going to be in the way, so I'm not even going to bother trying to film it. Once that snap ring's off, he says this piece, the cage for the rear planet, comes off. You can see a little slop in that. I don't know if there's a bushing or if it's just off of the, nope, no bushing. It just rides on that spline back there. And as you can see, another bearing here in the back where the tangs go towards the back of the transmission. And we'll grab that out of there. So that is going to go on there like that. And then let's just pull this out at the same time. This rear drum. And that surface is in pretty good shape. Everything looks really good so far. Right here is another bearing bushing that looks like it's replaceable. So we'll get these up on the table. And now we're getting into these rollers and these springs. And they talk about how these break in half, these springs that are zigzag pattern in there. But we'll get to that next and get those out of there. All right, on this next part, I'm going to try these right angle pliers so that you can see what this allows. Supposedly, this thing can only turn one direction with these rollers and springs in there the way that they are. And as you can see from the camera angle, it's a clockwise rotation. And when this comes out, all those springs and rollers are going to fall out of there. And I have a brand new set, so I'm not real concerned. There you go. And then what's holding all those in place is this little bracket that comes out. Looks like such. And these are the springs that make the rollers go in there. And geez, honest to goodness, I swear these all look like brand new. But again, we are going to replace that. And maybe this came out of a crashed car, but also back here there's another bearing surface. There you can see it coming out. And this particular one does not have, oh yes it does, it has two tangs on it. There and there that go back in to those indentations. So I'll get all of that out of there. This surface is like brand new. And this only goes in one way. This has an indentation on it. And this is the way we pulled it out. I'll double check that that's in the correct way. And we'll get it all cleaned up. And I think I'm going to take this whole casting up to a local machine shop that has one of those high temperature cleaners so that I can make sure all the passages and crap are out of this thing before I start putting it back together. The next thing he does is pull the tailstock housing. This is where the speedometer goes in. We're going to pull this rear seal. Put a rag on the floor so that catch some of the oil. He talks in that video how making sure before you put in a brand new seal that you make sure that that inner rubber has this part in the seal itself. He said he's seen these come without that spring in there and put the car all together and have it leak on it. And the other thing he does is put in Loctite cleans these surfaces off real well, and then on the exterior of the new seal, he'll run Loctite on that. Let's get these bolts out and get this off of here. Now, one of these bolts has a little bracket on mine, so I want to make sure I point that out where it goes, so that when I go to put this back together, I'll know where it goes. Looks like I'm also missing one. Looks like all of it. And there's the speedometer gear in there. It's plastic. Don't know exactly how I'm gonna use a speedometer, but may end up using that. All of these bolts appear to be the same length. And I'm gonna guess on the video that we're going to be pulling out these 4 bolts to get off this assembly here. But I gotta look at the video and see. He says the next step is just to pull this governor assembly out of this rear support bracket. And it has these steel rings on them that he wants to make sure that those, I know on the reassembly, that these are spaced out, and those weren't very well spaced out. But we'll set this on the bench and get to the next part. All right, he says these are feed tubes, and those are tight fit into that casting itself. And it looks as if they come up here and feed right into the valve body, but in between those steel rings that on that governor assembly that we just pulled out. So I'm going to switch sockets to a 1/2 inch. These ones on the housing assembly were 9/16, and we'll pull these 4 out. All right, I'll get something to pry on that, but by the looks of it, I'll get a piece of wood put on there to pry off of so I don't mess up the surface itself. I see a spring assembly here, and I recall from watching the video before it has something to do with the park. Okay, there's like a dowel right in this area. Then I got it cockeyed, and that's what really tightened it up. But I'm gonna hold this dog in here, but let me get this out of my hand. That's that rear support, and this is the dog that takes care of park. And somewhere in this shift, it shoves it down and into park, you know, so that it can't spin. So that's that piece. This spring clips right in that part of the casting over the top of this so that it activates, and there's a little roller up here. So I'll pull this out of there, this dog assembly, and let's see, we'll get this cleaned up. Well, we'll see what he has to do next, but there's another bushing that we can replace. In the video that I'm watching, he doesn't really take this shift mechanism apart. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out this section of the shift, and I got to make sure that goes back in before I start assembling all the rest of it. But I'm also going to do a close-up here so that I can tell how this thing comes apart. You can see back in that area that there's a roll pin. Now, I don't know that I'm going to take that much of it apart, and these bolts on the back end, I don't think I'm going to remove either, because those hold in that ratchet so that it can only go one direction. Back in there, you see the steps in it? That's where those rollers go. And I think I'm just going to get this much of it apart so that I can make sure that I don't get any leakage out of this shift shaft. But I'll set this back on the tripod and we'll get this apart. This nut here, I did fit a wrench to it, and it is 7/8 inch. That looks like a little piece of steel with some brass on it, just as a bearing surface for this to pivot on. But I think that's all the farther that I'm going to take this apart. I should be able to replace that bushing also, but tomorrow I think I'll take this thing down to the machine shop and let them cook it for a while and see if we can get it looking like brand new. I started this rebuild back in August of 2025, and I'm finally getting around to editing this in January of 2026. I've got over an hour of video, which once I edit it, it probably is going to be more like 30 to 40 minutes, but I've probably got well over an hour and a half more of video, so I might have to break this down to 2 or 3 parts, but I'm going to get this thing reassembled and get this transmission rebuilt, and I've got upcoming projects that it's going to include that transmission and the project that it's going into. Keep watching, and thanks again, but we'll get back to rebuilding this transmission in the next section. Hope you have a great day. This is what my bench looks like at the end of that, and we're moving along. I'll get these clutch assemblies apart, start figuring out how I'm going to start replacing some of these bushings. Don't let the 2 pumps confuse you. The buddy of mine who has the transmission shop gave me one of those just to have if there was problems with the other one. But tomorrow we're going to take those pieces to the machine shop and get them washed and start putting this thing back together.